Form 3 Science, First Midterm, Chapter 1, Nutrition in Living Things. Objectives. Students should be able to describe how plants need carbon dioxide, water and light for photosynthesis in order to make biomass and oxygen. They should be able to identify the constituents of a balanced diet and the functions of various nutrients. They should understand the relationship between the diet and fitness. And finally, they should understand the effects of nutritional deficiencies. What is nutrition? So, why do we actually need food? Well, to supply us with fuel for energy. It's needed to provide materials for growth and repair of tissues, and also to help fight diseases and keep our bodies healthy. Different types of animals based on their nutritional requirements. There are two broad categories of organisms called Autotropes and Heterotrophs. We know as a fact that every living being needs energy, but how they get their energy is little different from one another. When you look at the basic definition of autotropes, they are the organisms that can make their own energy. What about the heterotrophs? They are kind of just the opposite of autotropes. They can't make energy, but they find to get energy from other means. They depend on plant or animal matter to fulfill their energy requirement. Photosynthesis. Plants use light for their source of energy. The reaction that plant use to trap this light energy is called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis takes place in the leaves of a plant, and leaves contain green pigments called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll can absorb light energy. So, in the first stage of photosynthesis, plants take carbon dioxide and water into the leaf. Light energy is then absorbed by chlorophyll. This light energy is then used to convert carbon dioxide and water into the sugar glucose. In this reaction, oxygen is also produced as a byproduct. So this is the word equation for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water with the presence of light and chlorophyll. It gives glucose and oxygen. And you are expected to remember this particular equation for your exams. How to identify and measure the gas produced during photosynthesis. In this experiment, we investigate the gas produced during photosynthesis process. As we recall, oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. We prepare the setup as shown in the figure, and we have to keep the pondweed plant under a filter funnel, and we have to make sure that this setup is exposed to sunlight, so we can allow the photosynthesis process to take place. We keep the setup until a gas filled inside the inverted boiling tube, and with the help of a glowing splint, we are going to check the gas and find out what it is. To measure the gas filled inside the boiling tube, we can change or modify the setup. Instead of using an inverted boiling tube, we can attach a syringe so we can measure the volume of gas evolved in this process. Sprint test to identify the gas produced in photosynthesis. As the first step, we should light a sprint, then let it sit for a while until it almost burns out. Then we have to insert the sprint into the boiling tube containing the gas. The sprint should start glowing or it will reignite. If it does, then oxygen gas is present inside the boiling tube and we call it as a positive test result. This is because oxygen helps in the combustion process. Testing a leaf for starch. We should know how starch is produced in photosynthesis process, which comes from glucose. So plants make glucose during photosynthesis and plants can store it in their cells as starch. We can test a leaf for starch and prove that starch is there using iodine solution. Iodine is a chemical which changes its color from yellowish brown to blue-black if starch is present. We should take a plant leaf from a plant and we have to boil it in water for a few minutes. Then we place it inside a boiling tube and we should add boiling chips and also we should add ethanol to cover the leaf. At this point, it is very important that we have to switch off the Bunsen burner as ethanol is a flammable chemical. So we do it as a safety precaution. Ethanol boils in this point. So all the green pigments will come out of the leaf during this stage. The reason we do this step is that there is no point of adding iodine and looking for a color change if the leaf is all green. After about 5 minutes, by using forceps, we remove the leaf from the boiling tube and rinse it with tap water to remove the excess ethanol, and then we have to place it and spread it on a white tile. Then we add few drops of iodine solution onto the leaf and observe. If starch is present, the leaf will go blue-black. Yellowish brown iodine solution will turn blue-black if starch is present in leaves. If starch is not present, the color of the iodine solution will remain unchanged. You can improve the same setup to check if chlorophyll is required for photosynthesis by using a special kind of leaf called variegated leaf. So these variegated leaves can be taken from variegated plants. These plants have some areas of white color where there is no chlorophyll. So there's a nice illustration in the slide also of a variegated leaf. So if we test such a leaf as using the same methods, the only parts that were green will become blue-black with iodine solution, but the other parts will remain unchanged and they will have the same brown color of the initial iodine solution. Adaptations of the leaves to carry out photosynthesis. Leaves can be considered as the most efficient solar panels on Earth. They have the ability to help the plant convert the energy from the sun into a useful chemical energy. What actual features does the plant leaves have? that allow to maximize photosynthesis. Think. Well, if we think about leaves, generally they are thin. That means the gases from outside can easily get inside the plant leaf, specifically carbon dioxide. The leaves are also generally wide and flat, creating a larger surface area, allowing to absorb as much as light possible for the photosynthesis process. They have veins. They will carry water into the cells and glucose away from the leaves. And there's a leaf stalk which holds the leaf away from the stem so that it can receive maximum amount of sunlight needed for the photosynthesis process. Plants have different leaf arrangements. Usually, plants grown in a regular pattern so that the leaves are not blocking one another from sunlight. So here's a cross-sectional diagram of a leaf. As the first layer, you have the cuticle. The cuticle protects the cells in the leaf from external environment and it prevents water loss from leaf. Then the second layer is the upper epidermis. Then comes the Palisade mesophyll tissue layer. It contains palisade cells that have many chloroplasts to absorb sunlight effectively for the photosynthesis process. Then comes the spongy layer. It has air spaces in between the cells, allowing carbon dioxide and oxygen to diffuse freely through the cells. Then you have guard cells in the lower epidermis, and here is the stoma. So stoma is a tiny hole that allows gases to enter and leave the leaf. So here is the vascular bundle or the transport tissues of a plant. It helps carry water and minerals to the cells in the leaf. They also carry food from the leaf to the other parts of the plant. Nutrition in our diet. A car requires gasoline to run, and you need to treat your body the same way. We need to treat our body with efficient nutrients in adequate amounts. As consumers, we aren't like plants which produces their own food. We need to eat in order to fulfill the energy requirement. So, humans rely on plants that harness the energy of the sun to synthesize sugars. The energy in the foods, either taken indirectly in the form of fruits or vegetables, or indirectly eating animals that eats plant. We use the energy to carry out everything from maintaining organ functions to do physical activity. We need certain substances from the food we eat to live, grow, and reproduce. There are three main nutrients in our daily diet, namely carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But apart from these three main nutrients, our bodies also need certain vitamins, minerals, and plenty of water along with dietary fibers for correct functioning. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are an important source of energy. Carbohydrates provide our body with energy. Starch and sugar are the main carbohydrates found in food. Starch can be found in rice, bread, noodles, and cereals. Glucose is an example of sugar with simple structures. We call it as a simple sugar. Glucose can be found in ripe fruits. Cellulose is another type of carbohydrate that can be found mainly in plants. Cellulose cannot be digested by the body. It will be passed out as fiber from the body. How can we test for the presence of carbohydrates? So there are basically two tests for carbohydrates. The first one is Benedict's test. In this test, we have to take a sample and add Benedict's solution. Then we have to heat the solution at 60 to 70 degrees Celsius in water bath for about 5 minutes. And then we have to observe the color change of the test tube. A positive test will show a color change from blue to orange or brick red. The second test for carbohydrates is the starch test or the iodine test. In this test, we have to add few drops of iodine solution to the food sample. Then a positive test will show a color change from brown to blue-black. Investigate the energy content of carbohydrates. So, in order to measure the amount of energy embedded in carbohydrates, we are using a practical method like this. We have to prepare a setup shown in the figure, and we can burn fixed masses of different carbohydrates. For example, bread, white sugar. We have to take equal amounts of these carbohydrates. Then we can record the temperature at every 30 seconds intervals for 3 minutes. That means for about 180 seconds. And we can record these in a table, or we can tabulate the results. Then we are going to plot the graphs for each of the food item that we used against time taken for each carbohydrate to burn. Then we can compare the graphs. Proteins are needed for growth and repair of damaged tissues in our body. We can get proteins from both animals and plants. Meat, fish, and eggs are rich in proteins. Nuts and beans also have high amounts of proteins. How can we test for the presence of proteins? First, we have to take 2 milliliters of different samples of protein sources that we are going to check in different test tubes. Then we have to add 2 milliliters of sodium hydroxide solution into each of them, and we have to shake well. Then we are going to add copper sulfate solution drop-wisely into each test tube, and again we have to shake well. We keep these test tubes to stand for about 5 minutes and we record the observations. A positive test will show a color change from blue to violet or purple color. Fats. Fats provide about twice as much as energy compared to the same mass of carbohydrates. They are usually found in foods like butter, cheese, and oily fish. Fats are mainly stored under your skin to keep you warm. It functions as a store of energy. Obesity and other health problems such as coronary heart diseases may develop when excessive amounts of fats and oils are taken through our diet. Fats are also known as lipids. How can we test for the presence of fats? We can take different food samples containing fat. We can apply these food samples on different stripes of filter paper, and we can hold each stripe of filter paper up against the light. If the paper is translucent or the paper is having a translucent patch, we can consider that the food item contains fat. Vitamins and minerals. Besides the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, we need many types of vitamins. We also need some minerals and water. So here's a table clearly showing why these nutrients are important to us. Vitamin A, it is necessary for good eyesight. We can take vitamin A from carrots, broccoli, cantaloupe, cheese and eggs. Vitamin B1 is necessary for our body to break down glucose into energy. Beef, pork, nuts, whole grains and pulses contain vitamin B. Vitamin C keeps body tissues in good shape and it helps the healing of injuries. Most citrus fruits and green vegetables contain vitamin C. Vitamin D helps us to absorb calcium from our food. Oily fish, dairy products contain vitamin D. Vitamin K helps our blood to clot so that we do not have to bleed too much when we have an injury or a wound. Vitamin K rich foods are kale, spinach, turnip. Calcium makes up our bones and teeth, and phosphorus is doing the same job in our body. Iron transports oxygen to our tissues through the blood. Fiber promotes the movement of materials through the digestive tract. And water regulates our body temperature. It dissolves nutrients in blood to transport them. What is a balanced diet? A balanced diet is a diet that contains all the 7 main nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, water and dietary fibers in correct proportions for good health. So in this slide, you have a nice illustration of an Eat Well guide. The National Health Service in the United Kingdom has come up with this Eat Well guide to give people recommendations on their daily nutritional needs. It is a visual aid to help us have a balanced diet. Guideline daily amount. The guideline daily amount, or GDA, is a nutritional label that shows the value and the percentages of the daily value per serving of the food indicated. The GDA allows us to make informed choices about the foods we are going to buy and consume. Effects of nutritional deficiencies. When we do not consume sufficient nutrients from a particular food group, or when our body is lacking a particular vitamin or a mineral, we may develop nutritional deficiencies in our body. The first deficiency disease that we are going to talk is scurvy. It is a disease resulting from a lack of vitamin C. So symptoms of this deficiency disease include weakness in your body, fatigue, and most importantly, bleeding gums. The next deficiency disease is calcium deficiency disease. If you have too little calcium in your day-to-day diet, it will result in weak bones and teeth. The next deficiency disease is rickets. If there is too little vitamin D in your diet, it will cause rickets, which can lead to weakening or softening of your bones. If you have weak bones, then it can lead to bone deformities. The next deficiency disease is anemia. If you have too little iron in your day-to-day diet, you're likely to cause anemia. It causes lack of red blood cells in your blood or hemoglobin in the blood, and it lowers the ability of the blood to carry oxygen. The next deficiency disease is fiber deficiency. If you are constipated, this means your fiber intake is too low. If you have a healthy colon, you will have regular, frequent and soft bowel movements. If you eat food which contains low amounts of fiber, they will take longer to digest, and it will lead to irregular bowel movements. And it can also cause so much pain in your stomach. But sometimes it will lead to bowel cancers as well. Now in this slide, there are some questions for you to try. So as we have come to the end of the lesson, we'll summarize the lesson. We explained how plants need carbon dioxide, water and light for the photosynthesis process. We identified the constituents of a balanced diet and the functions of various nutrients. We understood the relationship between diet and fitness, and we understood the effects of nutritional deficiencies as well. So this is the end of the lesson. Hope you have gained some knowledge about this lesson. Thank you.